Okay, Mr. Waxman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you
Can
for
you
having me.
can you tell us a little bit about the 182nd district?
Sure. The 182nd district is Center City, Philadelphia, as well as a couple of adjacent neighborhoods to Center City in South Philadelphia. It is probably the most liberal district in the entire state of Pennsylvania. It's one of the most high turnout Democratic leaning districts in the entire state. And it's certainly a district that has been impacted tremendously by the pandemic, and in particular, the lack of people coming into the downtown neighborhoods, for tourism, for shopping, for food, entertainment. All of that is impacting the people that live in Center City as well.
So if elected, what would be your primary focuses in Harrisburg?
I think for me personally, and I think for a lot of my neighbors, the priority has got to be the recovery from the pandemic. And what I mean by that is obviously there was a tremendous economic impact, both here in Philadelphia, but really across the Commonwealth, because of the shutdowns, because of the restrictions, because of what we had to do to control the pandemic. Well, now is the time for us to make really, really big public investments, not just to restart our economy, but also to try to address many of the systematic inequalities in our society that were made worse by the pandemic. So for me, that's really, I talk about the 3 Ps: public safety, public infrastructure, and public schools. Those, for me, are the top priorities. We have a really, really serious, crisis in terms of public education funding in this Commonwealth. We are here in Philadelphia in particular. We are seeing major issues with our public transit system, both cleanliness, reliability, safety. These are the things that I hear a lot of people talking about. And so there just is a tremendous need for investment in our communities. And that's the priority for me going into the legislative session.
So there are other Democrats in this primary. What makes you stand out?
Well, look, the first thing I'll say is I have a lot of respect for the other people who are running. This is an open seat, so we're not really running against each other. We're more running, on our own backgrounds and our own qualifications. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, why I'm better than other people. I mean, I know a lot of state reps, and we could do a lot worse than the folks who are running in my primary, to be perfectly honest. For me personally, I think the thing that makes me attractive to voters is, this is a very, very progressive district. We all share the same values. I think the question becomes, who is it that can actually go to Harrisburg and implement those values and get things done? As far as I know, I think I'm the only candidate in the race who's worked in government in any capacity. I worked as a staffer for the Pennsylvania Senate Democratic Caucus and a state senator named Vincent Hughes. Who at that time was the highest ranking lawmaker from Philadelphia in the state legislature when I worked for him. I also held a pretty high profile role with the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. And I think it's just, people are saying, okay, so a lot of people agree about the issues. Who's the candidate that is ready on day one, who can, walk into the building with an existing set of relationships and understanding about how the legislature works. And I think that my background working in government makes me, a really, really strong candidate to implement those values in Harrisburg.
So that brings me to my next point. One of the most important relationships the city of Philadelphia has is its relationship with Harrisburg. How would you make this relationship better for the benefit of the city and particularly the schools?
Well, I think the number one thing is we have to change the dynamic in Harrisburg where Republicans control the legislature. I mean, if you want to say what is going to be the difference maker, what is going to be the thing that is going to bring resources from Harrisburg back to Philadelphia in the way that we need, there's just no question that it can only be done with a Democratic legislature. So I would definitely see my role as a lawmaker to be very actively engaged in raising money, volunteers, support, everything that is needed to help Democrats take back the legislature, because we just aren't going to have the kind of results we need unless that happens. The same thing with the governor's mansion. So my job won't start after I, win the general election. My job will start as soon as I win the primary and can shift my focus to helping other progressive Democrats around the state win their general election, because that is going to be the difference maker. That said, In terms of our relationship, we also need to have a strong democratic governor, so that's also critical. And I also, because of my experience working in the legislature, I do have connections with a lot of lawmakers from other parts of the state, in particular, from the western half of the state. And I think those relationships will come very much in handy as a member of the legislature.
Many of Philadelphia's leaders believe that the gun violence problem could be solved with better gun regulation. Harrisburg has traditionally disagreed with that. What would you do to facilitate a true conversation about this?
So I do agree that we do need additional, regulations of gun control, in particular to keep illegal guns from coming into Philadelphia. But I do not believe fundamentally the solution to Philadelphia's gun violence problem and homicide problem, which is obviously related, is going to happen through the regulations of guns. I think that's a component of it. I don't think it's the only component of it. And I believe that if you look at the neighborhoods where Philadelphia is experiencing the biggest jump in shootings, the biggest jump in homicides, these are neighborhoods with deeply entrenched poverty and deeply concentrated poverty. That has been true for a very long time. That's where the homicides are mostly taking place. That's where shootings are taking place. That's where the uptick has taken place. Until Philadelphia does something to aggressively address our poverty rate of 28%, we're always going to have a gun violence problem. We're always going to have a lot of the other problems that come up with concentrated poverty. And the only solution to that is to give people the tools that they need to lift themselves out of poverty, including direct payments if necessary. But no, I don't think we get our way out of this problem just through gun safety legislation, which I support. But there's other deeper issues that have to be addressed if we're really going to find our way out of this.
And you perfectly segued to my next question as well. What will you be able to do in Harrisburg to impact Philadelphia's poverty epidemic?
Yeah. Personally, the thing that I'm most interested in, honestly, are at this point UBI, Universal Basic Income, which are automatic payments to people below the poverty line to lift them out of poverty. This is a controversial idea, especially on the left, because it doesn't really transform the economic system. It just gives people, sort of a baseline to survive. But I am, some people are critical of it because Andrew Yang made a big thing out of it and people don't like him. But for me, it's like we have people who are suffering right now. We are dealing with the consequences of entrenched poverty right now. And if we don't do aggressive things right now as quickly as possible to give people the help that they need, we're going to continue to have, the ramifications of deeply entrenched poverty and concentrated poverty in certain neighborhoods. So I like UBI. I think we need to make sure that people have affordable and free health insurance, so they're not, bankrupted by medical bills. People need access to job training, to reliable public transportation, affordable transportation options, so they can get to and from work. There are so many things that we have to do, but I think the most immediate thing that we can do, honestly, is UBI to just lift people out of poverty immediately. That obviously is going to cost money. But the state budget is billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars. Don't let anybody ever tell you that there's not enough money in Pennsylvania to address these issues. There are. We just choose to spend money in other places.
What else should people know about you or your campaign?
Well, the first thing I would say is, I'm really proud to be from Center City, to be rooted in this community. I've lived in Center City now for over a decade. Me and my wife have lived in Center City West now for close to 8 or 9 years. I lived in Washington Square West for a number of years, so I'm really familiar. I've served on the Civic Association boards for a lot of these neighborhoods, so I really am very, very familiar with the neighborhoods. I'm from here, and I've lived here a long time. I also am really proud to be involved in a lot of different community groups and serve on boards that I think reflect my values. Places like the Civic Association or the Jewish Labor Committee, Friends of Greenfield Elementary, which is a fundraising arm for public schools here in our district. And so I think with that, sort of the bedrock of being from here for a long time, having that deep government experience at pretty high level jobs, and having the values of our neighborhood, and to bring that to Harrisburg, I think that's what makes me the right fit for the district. And I hope folks will give me the opportunity to serve.
Where can people learn more about your campaign?
People can go to votewaxman.com, which is our website. You can find more information than you ever wanted to know about me, my position on the issues, how to get involved with the campaign, how to contribute if you want to make a donation. All of that is at votewaxman.com.
All right, Ben Waxman, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.